Hello, team. Slight sidebar because I wanted to speak to you in this ATP Geopolitics video just briefly about the claims pertaining to some absolutely horrific events that may or may not have taken place in Israel as Hamas and their militants and terrorists went on a rampage. Now, there are claims that it's actually quite difficult to work out what the original claims are, because actually when you go back and look at the I-24 reporter reporting about this, she actually said there are 40 babies that are dead. Some of them have been beheaded. Then that became like 40 beheaded babies. And then you had people reporting that, but then reporting like third-party reporting. So a Times of Israel article quoted, a reporter from I-24 News said that an IDF commander told her that they had found the bodies of some 40 babies, some of whom had been beheaded. So you're then getting someone reported that someone reported that someone reported this, and then this whole thing just gets lost in the fog of reporting. But it almost doesn't matter whether it's true or not. So you get some people still saying it is untrue, even though, like, President Biden has come out and said he's seen photographic evidence of this. And the official sources not confirming it, and then there was so on and so forth. So I wrote this article, and I knew it would be potentially taken in a divisive manner, or some people will be like, "Oh, not sure about that." Well, I'm trying to understand stuff here. So, beheaded babies, horrific atrocity, or propaganda. All the obvious trigger warnings apply. And I was looking at this, saying, "Okay, we know we've got massacre of young revelers at a 4-piece music festival. So Hamas have done truly horrendous things. And no one's at all doubting that. Like, horrific. They've murdered at least 260 people in cold blood at music festivals. So, and 40 babies appear to be dead, whether they're beheaded or not. But there is an interesting history, and we can see it in light of something called atrocity propaganda. So atrocity propaganda is the spreading of information about the crimes committed by an enemy, which can be factual, but often includes or features deliberate fabrications or exaggerations. This can involve photographs, videos, illustrations, interviews, and other forms of information presentation or reporting. In this context, sociologists have defined an atrocity as, quote, an event that is perceived as a flagrant violation of a fundamental value containing 3 elements. So 3 elements are moral outrage or indignation, authorization of punitive measures, and mobilization of control efforts against the apparent perpetrators, which is exactly what's happening here. Okay, so you've got this atrocity, and you've got a whole load of atrocities, and then you're like, right, that then authorizes us to do these punitive measures, and then we're going to mobilize control efforts against the perpetrators, Hamas. And we'll talk about the issues about that in a second. But interestingly, there is a brief history. There is a history, of babies being killed in propaganda. So in my article, I talk about how if I just read this a little bit. So it's possible that this latest claimed atrocity actually occurred, but it's also worth noting that supposed atrocities against babies, the ultimate blameless innocents, have a long history in wartime propaganda. The tearful testimony of 15-year-old Naira al-Sabah in 1990 before the US Congress, claiming that the invading Iraqi soldiers had taken babies from their incubators in Kuwait and left them to die on the floor, galvanized American opinion in favor of the Gulf War. By the time multiple reports determined that there was no evidence of the atrocity, the war was over and won. British propaganda in World War I claimed that German soldiers were bayoneting Belgian babies and cutting off their heads and eating them, a ludicrous claim that nonetheless had the desired effect of dehumanizing the enemy. Irish rebels in 1641 were said to have ripped babies from the wombs of English mothers, a false claim used to justify the subsequent barbaric atrocities of Oliver Cromwell against the Irish. So on and so forth. Now, and this is important. So the idea of these sorts of truly horrific acts commands such a visceral reaction that revenge and retribution often spill over into acts of retaliation. Lex talionis, so this is a legal maxim, a type of law, lex talionis, the Talion law, or an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, is a legal maxim that can be found in the Bible and preceding law codes. So I've actually written chapters on this in a forthcoming book about how biblical law codes are actually found in older law codes, from Unamu and places around the Babylonian law codes preceding that, and where you find lex talionis is a really integral part of the way they do law. So although talion was the ultimate satisfaction a plaintiff might demand in those times, it was abolished in Palestine, of all places, in the 5th century BC. But it seems to be making this unsavory comeback at the moment, which is, right, you've done this horrific thing to us, so that now gives us authorization to do horrific things to you. And the problem is, you get this. I don't want to belittle this at all because it's horrific, but I say this to my boys. I've got twin boys who will go at each other, and one will do something to the other, and then the other will do something slightly bigger to the other. And I say, look, guys, this goes on until one of you is crying on the floor. That's what will happen here. Unless one of you is a bigger man and says, right, I need to somehow put an end to this, this will escalate. That's literally what I say that on a weekly basis to my boys. But this is exactly what's going to go on here, which is, right, they've done this horrific thing, right, we now need to do this horrific thing. And in that, there may be fabrication of horrific things, or it may be completely true. It almost doesn't matter. That is what's going to happen, bosh, 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 until you get to this state where it's just an absolutely terrible situation, whether you're, I don't know, carpet bombing Gaza or something like that. But you understand that these horrors, and Hamas have done these horrific things, which is it only goes one way. You know what Israel are going to do. So Israel do a bunch of things, and that's only going to go one way. So the problem is, you've got the law of unintended consequences, which means that those people who are, and this is what I keep saying, I'm saying this on a daily basis, that all Hamas are Palestinians, give or take. I know that's not 100% true, but for the sake of the argument, all Hamas are Palestinians, but not all Palestinians are Hamas. There are going to be there's 2.1 million people or whatever living in Gaza. There's going to be a lot of Palestinians who are not in agreement with what Hamas do. And if Israel then go, right, we're going to take righteous retribution on Gaza Strip and bomb the bejesus out the whole place, then they are going to throw a lot of those otherwise not big fans of Hamas people into the arms of Hamas. And then it becomes even more problematic. You are creating generations of people who have lost loved ones who will be thrown into the arms of this horrific organization. We've seen that. I was speaking to someone last night. I took my kid to rugby practice last night. I was speaking to someone who was telling me about how his friend was on maybe doing a tour of duty or something, or somehow he had a friend who was in a hotel in Gaza overlooking the beach, and he saw 11-year-olds, this is going back to 2007, saw 11-year-olds doing leopard crawling under like fake barbed wire or whatever, training to be soldiers. And like those 11-year-olds are now, what is that? That's 16 years later, those 11-year-olds are in their late 20s. Those 11-year-olds are now the people doing the atrocities in Israel. So will the reaction of Israel spark a whole new generation of Hamas terrorists? And this is a problem. So my look at this isn't this is not about the truth of the babies being beheaded, and it may well be true, but it's about the place this has in an escalatory ladder that is only going one way. And you can see Israel, and I talk about this in the article, you can see Israel doing the Machiavellian, you got this Machiavellian dichotomy. So Machiavelli said, what did he say? In general, you must either pamper people or destroy them. Harm them just a little and they'll hit back. Harm them seriously and they won't be able to. So if you're going to do people harm, make sure you needn't worry about their reaction. This is what happened after World War One. Germany wasn't sufficiently crushed, if you like, so that they could just, right, you've really annoyed us. We're gonna take that to heart. We're going to remember that, and we're going to come back even stronger. And kind of thing. I'm simplifying hugely, but that's what happened, arguably, with Germany. Now here, Israel will probably know that and say, we now need to completely destroy Hamas. But in so doing, will they completely will that complete destruction of Hamas include an awful lot of Palestinians who are not Hamas? And what happens to those people and the relatives of those people who are lost? So, I finished the article with any fix to the intractable problem of the Palestine-Israel conflict, such as a two-state solution, will require compromise, and compromise appears to be something to which neither side is prepared to commit. Claims of beheaded babies, whether accurate or not, escalate the tenor of the conflict to a level without constraints. The lex talionis with interest approach is a Machiavellian outcome that will not end well for anyone. But the reality is, can we see it going any other way? Now, I put that out on YouTube and said, what do you guys think of this as an article? And I knew it would be quite divisive. Some people saying this is a really good article in a time where emotions are raw and primal, good one. I'm Israeli. I heard this claim today and was suspicious regarding it. What is probably true is that the Hamas terrorists did murder babies. Yep. In one instance, they shot a baby and his dad in front of the mother. Yep. I mean, I've seen stuff that I don't want to ever see again. So yeah, absolutely. Mark Schwarman saying, who's a great supporter of the channel. Thank you so much, Mark. But I hope you've misinterpreted it, or maybe I have got it wrong. Whoa, ATP, I think you missed the mark. Hamas sowed the wind and will reap the whirlwind. Palestinian complacency and support of terrorism will not serve them well. No, so this is what I'm trying to do, is differentiate Hamas from Palestinians. So Hamas have done that, and they will reap the rewards of that, and they deserve, what they have coming to them. Hamas alone. But the problem is, they are inextricably linked with Gaza and with other Palestinians, so when you have there's a lack of nuance here. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen people weaponize or use this whole conflict to up their rhetoric, to do a divisive anti-left, from the right, or you get people on the far left who stand for pro-Palestinian self-determination, then taking this and saying, well, look what Israel's doing, it's more terrible stuff, but of course kind of forgetting the terrible things that Hamas did. And then you got the right using that to tar all of the left. And then so it's just a big mess that both sides are using in their political narrative. And there's a guy called Michael Cernovich he's just saying all sorts of nonsense on his Twitter. I'm like, no, that's a fallacy, that's wrong, that's a two cockroach fallacy there, blah blah blah. It's just like, this is such an opportunity for people to exploit, to sow division outside. This is not even talking about Israel and Palestine. This is outside, maybe in American politics or wherever. So me writing something like this is always going to be fraught with risk, right? That it will be taken incorrectly to be any kind of sanctioning or countenancing of Hamas behavior. Is not that. Hamas are despicable, and what they've done is despicable, and they may or may not have done another despicable act. But what these acts and the portrayal of these acts do is create this unending escalation of violence that unless someone steps away and says, right, we need to solve this without violence, there's going to be a lot of people crying on the floor, to mix my metaphors. It's just this isn't going to end well, and I don't know the solution. I don't know what can be done. I just see this like a Greek tragedy playing out, and people's lives, innocent people's lives on both sides will be lost. Anyway, I just I'll put the link to this article in the description below. Make of it what you will. I may put an edit in the article saying there's a few bits of evidence now coming through that suggest that it did actually happen, but it doesn't really affect what I'm trying to say here. I hope you get something out of it, and that the article itself isn't too divisive. Anyway, on with my next video.